Hello and welcome to another episode of the USA Volleyball Show. As you guys already know, Steven is still out on paternal leave, learning how to be a new father, dive into those lovely diaper changes and experiences there too. But we would like to welcome this episode's guest host, USA Volleyball Communications Manager, BJ Hoeptner Evans. BJ, how you doing today?
Hey, Clarence, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And I have been busy packing my bags for West Virginia.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in West Virginia? I know for those of you who listened to last week's episode, you heard a little bit about it, but BJ is getting ready to travel to a certain event that's happening in West Virginia.
So, our men's national team will be playing in the Continental Championships. Our continental organization is called NORCECA, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. So, is it 7 teams from those areas from those countries will be coming to compete in Charleston, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm. So, really quickly, for those of you who, just a little bit of a backstory. When I first started USA Volleyball in March of 2020, literally right before just everything shut down, I was on the Marcom creative team with BJ. And BJ again, one of our communications manager, holding the whole department down, basically, by her lonesome there too. Can you tell the listeners and fans a little bit about your background, and also talk a little bit about, if I could stop stuttering, a little bit about your job as communications manager, what you do, and all that good stuff, and you can even touch base on how you were out in Tokyo, during the 2020 games as well.
Yeah, so I started with USA Volleyball in 2006, and no, I don't want to know how old you were in 2006. I came to USA Volleyball actually from USA Triathlon, so I've been working in Olympic sports for a little while. When I first started at USA Volleyball, we were in a very small office, and there were about 20 people. So a lot has changed in 17 years. But my job has more or less stayed, at least the main goal has stayed the same, which is to promote USA Volleyball and everything it is doing for the sport. And so I work with traditional media. I work with social media, which has really, just expanded exponentially since I started. And I maintain really close relationships with the media and with the coaches and the athletes, so that I can help tell their stories. I've worked at 4 Olympics. The last one was for USA Volleyball, and the last one was Tokyo, which was a very unique Olympics with the COVID restrictions and having pretty empty arenas, but still really exciting to watch how well our teams did, especially our women's indoor team winning gold and watching Alex and April win gold, and then being able to go back 2 weeks later and watch our women's sitting team win gold. So that's a little perk of my position that I really enjoy, and hopeful that Paris will be my 5th Olympic Games with USA Volleyball and Paralympic Games.
Thank you for that. So before we actually take a deeper dive into today's episode, if you haven't already listened to our previous episode, we chat with Olympic gold medalist, U.S. Women's National Team setter, Micah Hancock. And throughout the episode, Micah chats about her Olympic experiences in Tokyo, as well as she talks about a little bit about her time competing too. She chats about playing overseas and so much more. If you haven't listened to the episode, definitely go back and listen to episode number 72 with Micah Hancock, or you can listen to it, or you can watch it, on USA Volleyball's YouTube channel.
And now it's time for the news with Hughes.
We are officially 1 year out from the 2024 Paris Paralympics. Our women's sitting national team was the first team for the U.S. to qualify for Paris. They will be looking to win a 3rd gold medal in a row, and the men's sitting national team will have a few chances left to qualify. Let's go USA, getting ready for Paris. Congratulations to the U.S. women's national team for bringing home gold at the 2023 NORCECA Women's Pan American Cup Final Six. Congratulations to Lexi Dienaberg and Carly Kahn for winning gold at the Beach Pro Tour Futures in Seoul, Korea. Also, a big congratulations to Aya Lindell and Zolani Hodel for winning a silver medal at the Beach Pro Tour Futures in Egypt. This is also their first international medal. Congratulations to Kim Hildreth and Tegan Van Gunst for winning a silver medal at the Beach Pro Tour Futures in Czech Republic. The U.S. Women's National Team is competing in the 2023 Norseka Continental Championship and is currently 3-0 at the time of this recording. What an epic night this past Thursday at Volleyball Day in Nebraska. The Cornhuskers, not only had an incredible outdoor match on the Cornhuskers football stadium against the University of Nebraska Omaha, but they set a world record in attendance for a women's sporting event with 92,003 people in attendance. I hope this becomes an annual match, and it'd be really good to go see it in person one day as well. That was an amazing thing to witness. The U.S. men's national team are competing now on home soil in Norseka Continental Championship September 5th through the 10th at the Charleston Coliseum and Convention Center in Charleston, West Virginia. Watch these matches streamed on the Volleyball Source YouTube page, and you can still get tickets to this week's matches. Tune in to USA Volleyball social media for the links, and all other information and latest news can always be found at usavolleyball.org. Now, before we get into today's episode, BJ, you know our guest pretty well. See what I do there?
Yeah, it's always fun working with you, Clarence. So I've known this athlete pretty much since I started at USA Volleyball. He was one of the first athletes I got to meet and work with. He has been to 4 Olympic Games for the U.S. and has won 2 medals.
So as you mentioned, today we are chatting with 4-time Olympian, Olympic medalist, and former outside hitter for the U.S. men's national team, Reid Priddy. Reid shares about his Olympic experiences playing professionally indoors and on the beach side of things. He talks about his business in sand and so much more. This is a great interview, so enough of us talking. Here is Reid Priddy.
What did you think about the men's VNL in Anaheim and everything that went with it?
Yeah, I think going to the VNL matches here in California was awesome because I know how rare it is that we have competitive matches on home soil. And even if it's on home soil, it's typically not in the home of the actual team. So I think for all those reasons, it was great. Last year, my son started playing indoor volleyball. Yeah, actually beach as well. He started on the beach, and it was something that was completely his thing. I was trying to get him into golf, to be honest. Golf. But he came to us and said, "Hey, I want to enter a tournament." And so being able to take my son to that experience at his age was amazing, because now the bar is at its proper height versus, the other 12-year-old that happens to be a little bit better than my son. So I think anytime that we can have exposure and access to our very best and the best level and have it mean something and it not just be an exhibition is just super, super rare and very awesome.
Mm-hmm. You said your son is 12 years old?
Yes.
And he's playing both indoor and beach already?
Correct. He turns 13 next week. Yeah. Gotcha. It was kind of funny because last summer, I'm not sure how it happened, but last summer he had heard that there was I think Therese Butler passed by one of our in-sand events and sort of told Caden about a 12 and under division. So he came to my wife, Lindsay, and I and said, "Hey, I'd like to ask Crosby, who is Jake Gibbs' son, if he could be my partner in this." And so it was kind of cute, like I called Jake and said, "Hey, Jake, is Crosby available?" And it was sort of like this whole little rite of passage of like, "Hey, do you think Crosby, you want to play with me in this event? And Crosby's like, yeah. And so they both were like, okay, we'll let our dads figure it out. And then we get the phone. So they played in a division. They had a lot of fun. Crosby is way better. He's had a lot more experience. So my son was got a lot better in the last year. But it was I was very surprised. I'm guessing that your audience and you guys might be surprised. But I was surprised to be so excited that he's playing volleyball. Like, that just wasn't on my radar at all. It wasn't an aspiration. Like, it was just my thing. I had no expectation that my kids need to have it be their thing too. But now that he's expressed interest, and, in baseball, we were always pulling him, basketball, same thing. It just felt like, yeah, maybe sports aren't for him, but to have him sort of have his slunks downstairs already ironed and pressed, and he's got his shoes, and he's kind of like, guys, we got to go. And he's asking me all these questions. It's been a really surprising, fun year to kind of resurge back into the junior world.
Nice. Do you think
have you shown him the gold medal? What does he think of it?
He hasn't. No, we have a great relationship. He definitely looks up to me, and he's asking me. He wants knowledge that he can use right now. And so dad's accomplishments are not usable. So he's asking me about all sorts of goofy things, almost too much. I'm just like, enough of the questions. Like, when should I Cobra? I'm like, never, unless you're playing against a 7-foot block and the set's too tight, but like, you're not practicing Cobra. Like, that's not a thing. Stop asking me these weird questions.
It's funny though, but like, as you talk about it, you call them weird questions. Your face is just lighting up every time you kind of touch base and talk about what he's asked to. So it's cool to see that excitement on your end too. I bet that's like it'll be a really, really, really like just a memorable journey along the way, whether he sticks with indoor or sand or both or however it is there too. But I think it'll be pretty memorable for you both.
Yeah, I mean, coaching 12s was very interesting, right? So I've been coaching a lot of adults in the last 5 years or so, but you can really tell that trying to garner their attention into the areas that you want them to go towards is it's a challenging process. But when you get it right, it's pretty awesome to see. At such a young age, they're able to bump, set, and spike. It's actually quite amazing.
Yeah. And seeing that at the, nationals level on the, girls side, the Olympian national finals, they're getting, some amazing rallies going. Some of them are taller than me. I'm 6'2", and it's just, a whole new generation of volleyball too. But it's really cool to see. But I mean, just kind of, on the same topic of volleyball, talk a little about coaching, talk about your son's journey. We talked about men's VDL already. How were you introduced to the game of volleyball? Like, where did you get your start from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was 15 years old. I was living in Florida at the time, in Central Florida. And so it is just the worst environment right outside. The atmosphere is super hot during the summers. And for whatever reason, between 8th and 9th grade year, the entire class, guys and girls, would all take PE in summer school. And I think the thinking was, it's so muggy that we don't want to deal with being sweaty during the fall school year when we're freshmen. So whatever, I just followed the flock and took summer school. And it was in summer school that I was introduced to volleyball. So the volleyball coach was also the PE coach. And it was really fun. And I was a longtime soccer player since I was like 5 or 6 years old. So this was, 10 years into that journey. And she was just like, hey, I see some talent. Like, you should try out. And so I did. I tried out for the team and I really liked it. I had a great time. I was on JV. I was tiny. I was like 5'4", played back row. I remember at some point she said, you really have good hands. You should be a setter. I was like, no way. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it was also new, but we ended up being really successful. And, we went 11-0 in the conference. We beat our varsity guys, which had facial hair and all this masculine stuff. And so we were like, oh, that was the coolest thing ever. And so we moved after that year to Phoenix. And the big question was, wow, I really love this sport of volleyball. And now we're moving to a new place. And will they even have men's volleyball? And when we moved to Phoenix, we ended up settling in a city that boys volleyball was just sanctioned the very first year. So it was very serendipitous. And I happened to go to the high school with the best coach, Fred Mann. So it was very fortunate. When I look back, I don't see much coincidence. I believe that there was a hand that was directing, opening doors. And there was just too many things, one after the other. And was able to pick it right back up. Ended up quitting soccer that year. I played varsity as a sophomore soccer, but then ended up having a terrible experience with a coach, unfortunately, and just went all in on volleyball from then on out. And funny enough, though, that PE coach that introduced me to volleyball. So what are we, 4 Olympic Games later, 20 years in the sport. I'd already won the Manhattan as well. So I'm like, you know what? I should reach back out and just express gratitude. So I reached back out to her, and it was classic. Her response was, "Remind me again?" Like, she had no idea. Wasn't following it. She was just a PE coach who loved sports, loved kids, and was just doing her job and was not at all on the bandwagon trying to. It was so funny. Put me in my place too. Just
she unintentionally humbled you. You're like, oh, all right. Well,
yeah.
Here's a reminder.
Yeah. So that was great. But that's how it all started.
So you talked about that not so good experience on the, soccer side of things that kind of, ended that, journey in soccer. At what point did you really see and notice where you have the, potential to make an entire career and a whole life, basically a lifelong career out of volleyball?
I probably have to set a little bit of context on just my personal framework. So I don't think in terms of probability. I think about possibility. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just in my nature. And so volleyball simply was something that I really enjoyed. So it started as a passion. And then not long into it, it became an obsession. So nobody was pushing me to practice extra. They just happened to build a sand volleyball court on our high school campus, I think like my junior year. So on lunchtimes, we're playing beach volleyball.
Mm-hmm. And what high school was this?
This was at Mountain Point High School in Phoenix.
Got it.
And so we were playing all the time. And of course, we were the outliers because the center of the volleyball universe was in California. And we were, Arizonans. So it was really like that North Shore movie about surfing. It was kind of a similar Rick Kane. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but he was in the wave park in Phoenix, and he goes out to North Shore. But that's kind of how our identity was. We were sort of the outliers. But I think the national team, sometime between, I think it was my junior year, came to Phoenix for some match, and I went to it. It was called the America West Arena at the time, so where the Suns play. And that was the first time that I was like, wow, that's amazing. I want to say Mike Lambert might have been on the team. It might have been before him, but it was just so impressive. And I think that's when the Olympics were first introduced to me. So that would have been before the 96 Olympics, or maybe just after. No, it would have been before. And then I did a USA tryout. The focus was just getting into college, and played at a D1 college in California. That's all I was focused on. So once that happened, my first USA tryout was actually quite awful. I made it to the second day, which was, it was the first time that the A team and the World Uni team was having a tryout at the same time. So I made it to the second day, which was really awesome. And on that second day, I'm gonna tell names. I don't have to protect anybody anymore, do I? So Mike Seeley and Eric Sullivan were trying out for the A team, and they couldn't have been worse to me that day. They were so mean, and I just remember they're like, basically it was just just go stand in the corner, and we'll take it from here. That's basically. So I hope they're watching this, because that was mean spirited and bully behavior. But I remember leaving that tryout thinking like, well, okay, the Olympics seem cool, but like if that's the environment that it's like I'm not interested. And I grew up through the high school years watching the AVP, so that was kind of what was on my mind. I'm just going to play beach and do that. But then a second tryout 2 years later came along, and I ended up making that team. And we trained in San Diego just as a World Uni team, and I tore my ab. I was so excited to play. I just overplayed in the first 8 days, tore my ab, and so the team went to the World Uni Games without me, and I went. They flew me to Colorado Springs, so it was the first time that I was sort of around the A team guys, and that was really formative because that was like they're talking about investments and pro seasons, and it just seemed totally foreign to me and super cool. That was in 1999. And then I went to the Pan Am Games after that. So I got to experience international competition for the first time. And then the very next year, I could have redshirted that year and stayed in Colorado Springs to try to make the 2000 team. But I had something in my mind that just said, nope, I want to graduate. I want to get my degree. I had a lot of great friends that were seniors also wanted to finish the season out. So I finished the season out and then got invited out to Colorado to try to make that last spot. I ended up was one of the last guys cut on that 2000 team. I was an alternate, and I got to see the entire buildup to an Olympic Games. And, from the gear, the attention, the excitement. And I was actually even on the bus with the team, the Olympic team. And I was just going to LA and they were going on to Sydney. So that was really the moment where I was just like, okay, whatever those guys did to be on the right side of this roster, like I'm now in, so that was kind of the progression for me. It wasn't, it seemed like the seed was planted early, but all these different steps, had to take place.
So Reid, we're talking about the Olympics. So let's move on to 2008. And the Beijing Olympics, and kind of what was it like getting ready for those, and then your experience in Beijing?
Yeah, I think, to talk about 2008, you probably have to go all the way back to 2005, and which is where sort of it all started. Of course, we didn't know anything at the time because we were just young athletes. But Hugh McCutcheon was our assistant for several years leading into 2004. And then he was, many of us went to Vienna, Austria, and sort of like a US protein plant, where he was the head coach. So he took over in 2005 and really had a vision of how he wanted to approach things. And it all started with this mission statement exercise that we thought was stupid. We just were just like, why aren't we, why aren't we in a gym sweating and yelling and jumping and hitting balls? Why are we sitting in a conference room for 2 days, not just one, and talking about what we want to achieve and dreams and all that stuff? But he had thick enough skin to deal with it and led us through a mission statement. And again, we didn't, even after that, it didn't feel like that significant of a thing. But looking back on it now, it was absolutely formative. So what that ended up doing was we articulated that we wanted to win 2008, and we weren't trending. We weren't the up and coming team. And eventually, every day that was referenced, every day in practice, that theme was referenced at the whiteboard, both before practice and after practice, and in very organic, natural, but authentic ways. And it really set us on this path of like becoming masters of our craft, and this whole pursuit of mastery. And of course, Hughes assembled an amazing team, and they were all sort of intellectuals that applied, data science and mindset stuff, etc. So coming into 2008 Beijing, we had just won the World League, which was, I think, maybe one of our last bits of maturity to sort of be ready. And what was really cool that happened in that event, that I'm not sure how publicly this has been shared, but we got smashed by, I believe it was Serbia early on. And in the locker room after that match, this was in the World League Finals, so we weren't out of it, but it was a bad loss. Hugh kind of went into his normal post-game thing, and I think at that point his voice, maybe, we were sort of all individually processing and probably selfishly, but Tom Hoff, who was our captain, sort of almost like cut him off and stands up in the locker room and just starts railing into our team. And Tom had developed a voice within our team that was incredibly trusted. So he had permission to do that because everyone knew where he stood. It was team first. So if you were being publicly scolded, you took it because you knew that it was not coming from a place of selfishness or belittling or anything like that. So he's just railing into us. We were making errors. We were going off into our own little corners on the court. We weren't coming together as a team. And he was just like, that's not us. We don't do that. And so it was really sort of that like ownership piece that he instilled. And we went out and barely won against Poland. I think Riley had like a touch, a match point in the fifth set, a touch off his head that we run down and happened to turn, and we ended up winning that in 5. And then in the finals, which was really cool, I believe Clay was like, all Serbia did. So we ended up playing that team again. All Serbia did was try to stop Clay because, I mean, he was our steamroller. And I think Clay went for like, I don't know, 0 for 8 or 0 for 10 in the first set. But because of that sort of kick in the pants in the locker room, we all were just, the dialogue was very positive. Keep swinging. We'll try to figure it out. Like don't even sweat it. And he went on to be, of course, the MVP of the World League Finals. He found his rhythm, found out what they were doing against him, and overcame. And so all of that took place just 2 weeks before we go to Beijing. So coming into Beijing, I think we were ready to do it. And ready to sort of take on the world. Probably had the confidence that, beating Brazil in the World League Finals, I just think that we felt that it was going to come together. And, obviously the tournament started off awful and tragic. And, but I think what Hugh did in terms of preparing us to sort of, hey, you've been working towards this. So the only way that we as players could deal with that situation was to just put our heads down and just try to play hard. And his moniker was play hard, play smart, play together. And so we did that and got into the medal rounds, and every game was close. And got into the finals, and it was probably the third set where I think we knew it was going to be, we were going to win. When they made some weird change, we just felt so in control. That particular team could score real points almost better than we could side out. So there was no gap in score that seemed to collectively intimidate us. And the fact that we knew that every 5 rotations, Clay was going to serve. So like that combination, we were nails passing. We had an amazing setter. And it was a really fun and great experience. And we just celebrated actually last Thursday. It was 15 years. So we still have a text thread. Of course, I totally forgot, but all of a sudden we start getting dinged. And I was actually playing in a golf event for 11 other guys. So we all celebrated. We basically had a little celebration and I said, okay, you 11 are representing my 11 teammates. Cheers. And we celebrated the 15 years. That was an amazing experience.
And I'll just fill in here. I know you guys don't love to talk about it, but the day after the opening ceremony in Beijing, Hugh McCutcheon's family, his wife and her parents were attacked in Beijing, and her father was killed and her mother was severely injured. And so that immediately he left the team and was with them in the hospital in Beijing. And so the team played the first 3 matches without Hugh, and Ron Larson was the the de facto head coach, and John Speraw was one of the assistants, and he stepped up. And really, the way you and the team fought through that and, won those first 3 matches. I remember that very first match against Venezuela, like wondering if you were going to win because it went 5.
Yeah.
And I also remember was it the semifinal against Russia that, again, you guys, it went 5, and it was sort of David Lee coming through in that fifth set that really carried you through.
Yeah, well, the semifinals was in 5 also. So I'm sorry, the quarterfinals. So we played.
I couldn't remember when you played Russia, but
Serbia was I think we won 15-12 in the 5th. That could have gone either way. And then so that block actually that Dave Lee blocked Mihailov on the match point. Sort of the backstory with that one is that Max Mihailov, I think he ended up being a teammate of mine over in Russia, but I think he was 18 at the time, and we just did not have an answer. He was destroying us the entire night. And so we had an internal dialogue between Riley and myself, Dave Lee, and Ryan Millar. And, by and large, the middle blocker's role typically is to close the block. And Max was just chewing us up. And Riley and I, undersized. And we finally just said to Dave and Ryan, like, don't close to us. We might fly one time, we might stay. Like, he's not hitting seam, he's hitting sharp, he's hitting cross and sharp and cross. So whoever the outside hitter that is not blocking will fill that seam. You guys just get left hand on ball, stop that cross. And so we were literally just rehearsing, talking that through, and he was just obliterating us. But we finally got him one time. And I love to tell that story because sometimes it only takes one, and it just happened to be at the right moment. And that was like, in terms of like euphoric, I can't even imagine the amount of dopamine that was running through the system, because that was like one of those last second shots. Like, you don't know which way it's going to go. And it was absolutely thrilling and amazing to be a part of.
I think there was also a quote from Loy Ball, who was your amazing setter, who said he just went over to David Lee and said, "Stop this guy."
Yeah. Yeah, he was tearing us up. I mean, they're an amazing team. They had a coach, Alekno is very similar to the type of style that Hugh coaches. So they were interesting. And of course, they were way bigger than us on average. And so they were always a tough team to play against.
Through the entire journey, the adversity, the training, the prep, the intense moments, what does winning that gold medal mean to you personally?
What does the gold medal mean to me personally? It was, and I miss it. I do. I absolutely miss it. When I watched those guys play in Anaheim, I was just like, oh man, I miss this. So I personally, I can't answer that for other people, but for me personally, competing at the very edges of your own ability is where I get that internal dopamine hit. And so I played for some super teams in my career where winning was almost the expectation. And that I never enjoyed that as much as sort of like not even knowing, like, how is this match going to go? So I loved in that period of time to be in the final match, just in the match, knowing that there wasn't another match happening in the world that was like this. This was the top of the top. And so to overcome, feels great. It's I guess having a gold medal is I don't know, I guess just I don't even know. I guess I've never really even thought about that question, to be honest with you. It's obviously special. It earmarks and catalyzes that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I just really enjoyed competing at the highest level, which is really what drove me. I mean, a lot of the elements that drive professional athletes aren't necessarily super healthy things. And, for example, I never took sick days. Like you can't even say that in post-COVID era, but like I was so afraid. I knew that everybody was so good. And I was like, man, if I take a sick day, somebody can take my spot. And so that drive to sort of be the best that you can be and to compete against the best, if there was as high of a achievement that was, I think the downside to that was, when we won, I think typically after an Olympic Games, the locker room's talking about like, all right, what are you going to do? Are you going to go vacation, or I'm going to take a year off, or this, that, and the other? And Brazil had just dominated for 5 years. So I think they set the standard. It was just sort of like, all right, like, how do we do that? Let's go repeat that. Like, nobody's taking any time off. Let's go. And that was right when Hughes shifted to the women's team. And then Alan became the next coach, but he wasn't hired until I want to say like late spring. So there was just this momentum shift. And, I think for any of your young listeners that are out there, it is very compelling. And you're a USA alumni, want to see US dominate over time. So it's not just about winning one tournament or one world champs or one Olympic Games. It's about dominating and being at the top and medaling in all the events. There's no reason why we could not do that with the amount of development that's going on in the US right now in volleyball. And that needs to be the standard. And unfortunately with social media, I think one of the downsides, I think we just saw it in US women's soccer, that there's such an allure to actually be on the team that you lose that little bit of like, what's the purpose of the team? So it's not just about arriving on the senior team and representing USA, even though that is absolutely epic and amazing. But once you're there, you have a job to do, and that is to try to win every competition that you enter. And so, yeah, I think, I think that's kind of what it means to me.
And thank you for that. I know it's hard to put something like that into, a few words and sentences too. So, I mean, I think you painted a really good picture there. I think this is a good segue into, 2016, since we're on the topic of Olympics and, some really memorable things happening. But, that was the year, after you recovered from your ACL tear. And can you talk about a little bit what that rehab process was like for you, and what it was like coming back to win bronze?
Yes. So this is how am I going to summarize this in 90 seconds?
You have.
By the way, again, if you're good on time, we can go well past.
Yeah. No. I don't want to bore your audience. But so I was on the team in a starting position for 14 years. When John took over, I knew that John is an innovator, and he likes youth, and he likes a young team. So I remember when I took the call, I don't know that I've even ever told John this, but I remember being in Turkey at the time and talking with John about the future. And literally I'm thinking like this conversation could go one of two ways. And I was thinking he was going to be like, hey, like, thanks for your service. High five. We've got this long list of young guys, and he was thankfully like, hey, like, let's do this. Let's go. If you still have it in the tank, let's go. So I entered into 2014. Now 14 years. And so even though John gave me the permission, I still was searching for how did I fit with this young group. I had been around long enough to watch my contemporaries phase out in one way or another. And so we had a it used to be called World League. Now it's called VNL. We had a pre-tournament in Colorado Springs before we went to Bulgaria. And during those matches, man, I was soul searching because I was like, I was looking for motivation of like, I know how important this job is. Like I just told you guys, this isn't about taking up a spot. This is about winning. And so I need to find vision for how I uniquely fit into this spot. I do not want to just, occupy it. If I'm not sort of vibing and naturally fitting. So, I'm kind of reaching into my family now because they've now been a part of it with me for a long time. And I'm like, well, maybe I could play for them because they love this. Like, I'm just kind of searching. So when I went to Bulgaria, I had all of that swirling. And I remember being in Sofia, Bulgaria. Imagine a 10,000 seat arena that is like 60 years old. So I'm in this dark and dingy locker room and literally moss on the walls, dripping, like the whole deal. So, and I'm just literally thinking about this first match, like, man, am I done? Are we over? And so as I walk out, I start to warm up, go through my routine, and then all of a sudden, the crowd starts filling in. I get, my juices flowing, start sweating. And we get up to the national anthem, and now all of a sudden, like, I'm starting to catch some vision here. Okay, this is interesting. Like, this is still really meaningful. And then we get into the match, we get down 0-2, and then we ended up winning in 5. And I played a really important role that night, but it was no longer because the stat line wouldn't have shown it. But I just know that there was ways that I fit into that team that I was the veteran. There was no situation that could come that I probably hadn't seen and could probably help bring value to the team just by way of experience. So I'm not the high flyer. I'm not the hardest hitter anymore, like all this stuff. And so after that win, I literally got all the vision I needed to know that, like, all right, gold in Rio, done. Like, this is it. I know exactly the role, the person that I need to be. I know that I can do this role, and I'm ready to go. So the very next night, we pick up where we left off. We're cruising. We're almost done with the match, and that's when I tear my ACL. So had I not had the revelations of the night before, like, who knows what would have happened in terms of a recovery, because I was 36 years old. So I ended up, we ended up flying back, ended up choosing to take out I had double knee surgery. So I blew out my ACL in the knee that has jumper's knee damage. So I couldn't use the tissue in my jumper's knee to create a new ligament. So the surgeon says, he was very confident. We need to take the tissue out of your good knee. And that was very controversial, right? Because the other option was to use a cadaver. And at the end, it came down to math. The cadaver failure rate was 1 in 5. Using my own tissue was 1 in 20. So I had a much higher chance of the graft taking. So I chose to cut my bad knee to create a new ligament into my good knee. And that obviously delayed my comeback even longer, made it more painful and harder. But I'm looking back now, it was the best thing ever. And so I in my absence, the team ended up going on to win that World League. And without me, so that brought on a whole new set of like question marks when you're just like grinding, doing little goofy rehab things, and the team's winning. It's like, oh, okay, maybe my role isn't that important. Maybe they're good without me. But just kind of grinded through it. The next summer, more injuries. Like basically, there was so much stress. I can't even. I'm sure a lot of athletes out there can understand, but like my desire to come back was, my mindset was obviously stronger than my body was ready to handle. And so it got to a point where we had a trip in Iran, and I was secretly warming up so that I could warm up with the team. And I ended up having a stress fracture. I mean, it was just too much, but I mean, I was very motivated. Finally, my body started to cooperate, And what was really fascinating was that at the time, John was basically saying, whether this was true or not, only you'll have to ask him, but he was basically letting us know that like, hey, I'm going to choose the roster based on data. So every day we're going to take stats, we video it, and the numbers are going to tell a story, and that's the story that we're going to go out with. So, here I am, always relied on my sort of ability to just be more athletic and faster and more dynamic. Then that was my strength. And now all of a sudden I couldn't do those things. So I had to produce numbers under situations that I didn't have my data. And what was really amazing about that process was that I had to learn all these new and different ways to kill a ball. And so when my body started to catch back up, then I could do the old stuff still and the new stuff. And it was just like, I mean, if any young player is listening to us right now, learning how to use timing and the block to your advantage as an attacker is the number one skill. Vision and range basically is what we say at the top level. But I was a banger. I would jump and try to avoid. And once I learned that other skill, it was like, why was I spending so much time doing all of that stuff? Like, there's still going to be that moment where it's all going to line up and you're going to be able to have the hit that everybody remembers. But posting all the other stuff, chiseling, using the outside hand, understanding that blocking is really hard. Not very many blockers are actually over the net at the point of impact. Manipulating timing. I'm going to hit it fast. I'm going to hit it slower. I'm going to hit it high. I'm going to hit it low. Just basically creating, we would call it being cagey. Basically produced in me, like, I just felt like a Swiss Army knife, that like I had a tool for every situation. So by the time we got to Rio, I felt like I was playing the best volleyball of my entire career, and certainly couldn't hit over the block, wasn't bouncing dicks. But in terms of like production and, getting things done, getting the job done that needed to be done in the exact moment, if I had to play a high stakes match with everything on the line, I would choose 2016 Reid, even though, it probably looked cooler in 2010. So that's kind of how it was in going into the team. And obviously I played more of a supportive role. It was devastating to lose to Italy in the semis. That I think that took our entire squad a lot of time to heal from, to even be able to compete on that Sunday.
Reid, just to break in, how was it for you? I know how it was for me watching those serves from Zaitsev in that Italy match. Just you were in control. The team had won the first two sets, and it must have been so hard for you to sit there and watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly, well, in London, Italy did the same exact thing. It just happened to be Zaitsev and Savani. And, I felt like we were a better team, but like those guys are sort of like savants. I mean, like they just have a mind. They've been introduced to a high level of volleyball at such a young age, and that I think they understand when the moment is the moment, and they get used to rising to the occasion. And I think Italy, of all the countries in the world, have overperformed their talent more than any other team. And I think there were, some smart college volleyball professor should study that and try to figure out like what's happening with that, because it's not physical, it's mental. There's something happening there that is interesting. So yeah, I mean, so that wasn't new. That wasn't a surprise, I should say. But yeah, it was obviously, as a player, you have a role and you don't get to choose how you're utilized. And obviously it was very difficult. It was very difficult to watch that happen. And even into the fifth set, very, very difficult. And, I get a lot of credit now for my mindset now. And, people need to know that my competitive drive is what is unique. And it was, once I learned that that was a stronger system than my self-confidence, it overran my self-confidence. But I was not the guy that was always super self-confident and always knew, all those different things. And so certainly after that Italian match, I was devastated. And it took 36 hours maybe for me to even be at a place where, because the one thing I did not want, I knew that I was ending my career the next day. And the one thing I did not want, I was able to get all the way to that point with gratitude and acceptance and full on commitment. And I there was like this seed of resentment that was like bubbling up, because for me, it was all about gold. It was just gold. And thankfully I have an amazing support system around me, and was able to sort of work through that process with them, and then just even in my own journal, and was able to find really land on gratitude, and was able to enter that final day like literally at peace, total gratitude. And my number was called, and I was able to put out my best stuff. It was just totally pure. It was a really special way. It was really special. Obviously a ton of hardship up to that point, but I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity, and just to be out there with the guys and to share that experience. And those are the times that you don't want it to end. Like I said, I played on some super teams where it's just like, let's hurry up and win. Those are the times where it's just like, win or lose, I just want this to keep going. Like, how do we just extend this match? This is so fun to kind of, punch, counter punch. And so yeah, that was a special experience.
So, aside from winning gold and winning bronze, and what have been some of your favorite memories from the Olympics? It could be, one thing from each of the games you experienced, one consistent thing that's been, a constant overall, or, anything in between. Like, what are some of those, most memorable takeaways you have from all that?
I think all the shared experiences are the best ones, right? So all the shared experiences with the teammates, you take for granted when you're in that space that you basically are traveling around with your brothers. Like it's you've got this massive family, and then you get into the real world and you're an only child. And it can get really lonely really quickly. So I think that, in the early stages, like the first Olympic Games, I just think it's all about like lights and fancy, like free stuff. And it's hard to sort of settle in. But by the time that like I got to Rio, none of that stuff was on my mindset. So I even remember walking out during the opening ceremonies and just being filled with joy, like legitimate joy and excitement with my teammates. And I could definitely, my teammates would tell you, I can be very driven, forward thinking, focused, locked in, and just sort of miss, the relational side sometimes. And I feel like at that stage, I was able to take it all in, which was really special. I was actually asked a similar question yesterday. Actually, I was Misty May, myself, and Troy Tanner. We all went down to Camp Pendleton and did some stuff with the Marines yesterday on the beach, which was super fun. But they asked me about an Olympic story, and one of the great ones was my first Olympic Games. I didn't really understand what was happening. So during the opening ceremonies, you first get dressed and you're hanging out in front, meeting other Americans. Then you get bused to a holding tank. We're playing cards, we're meeting people, and there's nonstop water and Powerade everywhere at the time. And so you're just hydrating and try to stay off your feet. By the time that we get to March, I had to go to the bathroom so bad that it was painful. It wasn't just like, man, I really need to. So we're walking into my first Olympic Games, and all I could think about was, I'm going to pee my pants on worldwide TV. And I don't know if you guys remember Greece, but they had the infield had water on it and it drained. So I'm thinking like, do I ask the guys to like huddle around me and I squat down? But so somewhere along the way, like literally, we're trekking along. We get into the infield, and at this point, I'm just I don't know. I'm having the worst time. One of our best sprinters of all time, Sonia Richards-Ross, somehow finds out that I have to go to the bathroom. She's like, I got to go too. And so we basically, the confidence of the two of us, we literally leave and we walk through countries and go into the arena and go to the bathroom. And then we walk back in. So we have this connection point. So in terms of like Olympic stories, that's one of my favorites. And I mean, she's had an amazing career and then now still killing it. So every so often, we'll just, connect message whenever our paths cross and have just the greatest laugh about that first story, having to go to the bathroom. But yeah, there's lots of times where, it's just the team and also the family. I would say your family, you have your own little tribe that's traveling with you, the friends and family house that, your listeners probably don't know about, but there would be there's the athlete village where you would stay, but then there's the U.S. contingent will take over and create basically a meeting, a hospitality space where your family will go, and that is basically their village, and that is kind of your spot to meet up with them, and it's all the U.S. family. So that awesome experiences being there and meeting other families, other athletes, and so yeah, a lot of great memories.
Reid, I'm curious, what were some of your favorite teams to play against? Because I remember one time in Chicago against Poland, and there was some jabbering across the net. I think we have a photo of you actually kind of not looking super happy. And I'm just wondering, like, were those some of your favorite matches, or who did you like to play against?
That's funny you say that, because for whatever reason, indoor volleyball has sort of absorbed sort of a European mentality, almost tennis-like. And so I sort of absorbed that as well. So there was this like line of respect. And all it took was me playing on the beach for a little bit and playing against Trevor Crabb to learn that like, why do I have this expectation that there's certain teams and players that have zero respect? And, but at the elite level, there's usually this like unspoken level of respect. And so I think those types of times boil up when somebody has sort of crossed that invisible line. That's kind of funny that it's even there in the first place. So yeah, Poland, I remember, I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was a middle blocker. He was a goofball, and there was no line of respect that he was interested in holding. So that was a good one. But I always loved to play against Brazil. To me, they were the Chicago Bulls. They were the team. They were the dynasty, really. And so our desire and passion to play against them ended up being their Achilles heel, because we got so comfortable playing against them. Russia was always hard for us because I think their perspective and worldview, not worldview, that can be taken all sorts of different ways, but they just seem to be so matter of fact. Like, we're on today, we're off tomorrow. And so it was hard for us to hem and haw with those types of teams, where we seem to be more engaged with those Latin American teams that a lot of passion, a lot of competitiveness. So yeah, I guess I don't know if I had a favorite team to play against other than Brazil. I hated playing against Italy, especially when they had Vermilio, even though he was a teammate of mine later. But he spent the entire game just talking. And that was actually, that got brought up recently as well. So 2004, I think I get subbed out, and I'm sitting on the bench just watching him just like light up our guys. And I just was raging. So by the time I get back on the court, I'm engaging now with him, and we lose, and we're back in the locker room, and Tom Hoff, same leader, comes to me, and he's just like, all you need to do is win. How much better would you feel right now not to beat him in a war of words, but to actually be sitting in the locker room right now as the one who won. And that really shifted my mindset of just like, all of this smack talking stuff is just absolutely goofy. It's theatrics. I want to win. I want to make sure that other guy is sitting in his locker room upset because, we've got the music going and we're hanging out, we're having fun because, we came out on top.
I think I'm glad you brought it up in the beginning, but I think it's a good transition into the beach and AVP side of things. But can you just talk about what it was like winning the Manhattan Beach Open, and what it's like competing in it, what it was like to win it at that level overall? I mean, that's a very special tournament to win.
Yeah, the most special, I think. I mean, it's obviously massive, and just like everything, context is really important. And so, that particular summer, I had linked up with Theo Brunner to make an Olympic run, and so we had some early success, and then hit a rough patch in the middle of the summer, and I really, I was really had my sights on competing for the U.S. on the beach side. And at the time, our beach U.S. teams were not thriving. So the Jakes and Taylors, the Phil and Nicks that were at our top were not in the sort of position that they had always been in the past. And so from my perspective, I'm sitting there looking at what's ahead of us. So we were sitting fourth. We were 33rd in the world. We were sitting fourth sort of in that race. I think the other team might have been Casey Patterson and Chase Budinger. So I'm just looking at what's ahead of us, and I'm just like, oh man, like this is going to come down to the wire. This is not going to be a runaway, and it's anybody's game. Or Try and Trevor were up there too. So things happened with our particular team, and in the end, Theo basically said, I'm out. I don't want to be in this race anymore. And unfortunately, that happened at a window to where I could not pick up anybody else. It was mathematically impossible. You need 12 events to even qualify. And so that was just devastating. I mean, just to have somebody else have that power was just eye-opening of how difficult beach volleyball is and how important it is to be linked with somebody that's like-minded and could, I don't know, see it through. So as soon as that happened, it was right after the Vienna event, and Try had just broken his hand. So Rich Lamborn sent a text to me and Trevor that basically just said like, hey, Trevor Priddy on the pier this year, something goofy like that. And then it was just like, well, yeah, let's do it. And of course, there's some backstory that I'm sure you can find online of Trevor and I. Trevor was one of those guys that there's no such thing as a line of respect. I mean, it's his greatest skill to try to just chirp and talk. And so we kind of had been at each other in a very highly public way, but behind the scenes, we sort of had already buried the hatchet. I just didn't understand where he was coming from, to be honest. And actually, when I looked at all of the players, I actually respected the way he competed more than any of them, because he never mailed it in. I mean, to me, competitiveness is one of the most important values. And I think it's also composure and respect is also up there too, but I'll take competitiveness. And so we linked up and went on this tear. So I think that context is really important. I mean, we're both sort of just like, I'm just super bummed, right? Because the Olympics is officially over and I didn't lose. I just lost the opportunity to stay in the hunt. And then Trevor, those guys were playing really good, and Try broke his hand. So going into that event, obviously there was a lot on the line off the court and off the seeds. And so it was amazing just to like put my head down, and Trevor and I are really good together because we're both pretty fierce competitors. And so at the end of the day, there was zero drama. He wasn't worried about what I was thinking. I wasn't worried about what he was thinking. It was like, what does the job need to get done? And it was like a great match. And in beach volleyball, and I don't think people realize this a lot, but siding out is really important. Obviously, it's a rally score game, so siding out is critical. So if you have two guys that are really good at siding out, you have a good chance at winning. Now, scoring real points is also important, but I think that everyone has just sort of gotten locked into the Phil Dahlhauser, Ricardo Santos, tall guy, small guy, or the Misty and the Carey. But I think looking at our win, I think more people should be questioning, like, how did that happen? You had two undersized guys. Obviously, I'm like a non-existent blocker on the beach. Trevor is a good delay blocker, but really the model is we took extra risk at the service line. So serving is the first part of your defense. So we just risked it from the service line. We ended up scrambling for points and being really good in transition. And so I think that's a model that is so overlooked. Everyone keeps chasing sort of that big, small concept, when in reality, I'm telling my inside coaches, like, find somebody you can side out with and then spend the entire offseason trying to score points from the service line. You'll have a chance at gaining ground against your competitors. So coming out on top was very timely. And I will tell you this, COVID happened the next year. So I will tell you, I do still hold some bitterness and resentment are not the right words, but missed opportunity. Like I feel like me as a beach player, never even got close to what was potentially possible. Mm-hmm. But having that win at least was helps me. It helps me deal with it today, because COVID happens the next year, and where I was at off the court in business, trying to maintain basically an expensive passion hobby, which is beach volleyball, just was not possible. So, man, if that didn't happen, and I just sort of phased out of beach volleyball without that would have been a hard pill to swallow. I'd been a grumpy old man probably.
So what are you up to today? What business are you in? What are you doing? What is In Sand?
Well, In Sand is a performance training company, and I basically was looking for, I did not want to compete with my friends. And I just felt like most people that transition out of being athletics would probably go into a junior market and start a club and and that just seemed really hyper competitive to me. I did not want to compete. I just represented the country for so many years. That was my identity. So where's the gap? And so I just started really researching and searching for, where is the gap? I really want to see volleyball expand from a business standpoint. And I had been on the board of USA Volleyball for a while. So, and in a lot of different conversations of people trying to solve the volleyball sustainability problem the same way, which was, let's start from the top and go down. Let's build a pro league, and that I didn't seem like that was working. And so I guess a few things happened. One, starting to play beach, my body got better. So I started to notice increase muscle gain, decrease anti-inflammation needs. There was no impact to my joints. It was fun. It was outdoors. It was communal. And then I started noticing that so many people have said yes to volleyball, but aren't playing it today because they weren't good enough to keep going. And there's just not that many. Sure, there's a lot of rec leagues, but how do we find something that fits into an everyday working person's, 40-hour a week, or kids and all that kind of stuff? So we essentially, saw that model. And I think the last piece was recognizing that the dynamics that happen in an athletic department. So whether it be USA Volleyball or Nebraska collegiate athletics, the dynamics that are happening in those environments, where everything is designed around athlete performance are really, really compelling. I mean, it is thrilling to be a pro athlete. You are being invested in. You're surrounded by a team of experts, and their only goal is to help you be the best that you can be. So with that in view, and also being a part of a team and this team sense, and even being in Colorado Springs, being able to train next to the combat athletes where they're just like at another level, or the gymnasts. I mean, there was so much synergy that happens on a US campus. And so I basically was a part of this mechanism for 20 something years. And now I'm off on my own. And I'm recognizing that the fitness industry is basically people are renting access to a weight room. And that's not weights are a part of increasing performance, but it's like 5%. So there's this other dynamic of all these other things that are happening, teams, coaches, and so all of those things basically culminated in the unique link that I found was to basically take sand as a technology, take volleyball as a strategy, and build a community around being active outdoors and moving with other people. And our tagline, so the company is called In Sand. Our tagline is Move Together. And I can close with this, that comes from William Morgan, basically, who invented our sport. And our sport, as I understand it, oh my gosh, John Kessel and everybody else that watches this is going to totally correct me because my history is going to be wrong. But as I understand it, essentially industrial revolution is happening. Kids are leaving their farms and now they're in cities. Their options are bars and brothels. How do we create a new healthy space for the youth? Let's use sports. So the YMCA starts to serve the youth in that way. And William Morgan recognizes that basketball is a little bit unique in who it's attracting. He wants to create a game that's more attractive to more people, that guys and girls could play together at a lunchtime over an hour. And his entire goal, it sounded like from the history that I know, was that he wanted people to just get together and get moving. Because when those two things happen, there's all this other ancillary benefit that happens with that connection. And so that's what we're channeling. We're trying to basically take a page out of the CrossFit book where they combine some things that are interesting and likable, make a workout and build a community around it. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Anything else going on right now in your life with your family? What, son's playing volleyball? I know we talked about that. How about your daughter? Does she look like she's gonna go into athletics?
She is. She's theatrical. She likes dance. She's very social. We have her in Friday Night Lights for the first time, so we're learning how to catch at the moment. We've got her all sorts of. Dad's trying to level her up quickly because her first game's next week. But we homeschool. My wife is a rock star in homeschooling our kids. We did that before COVID, so it actually was great. Our son just started Balboa Bay. We're really excited about, which has been around forever. Travis Turner's club, and Sherry Finn is the middle school director. So yeah, we're settled in here. It's been 15 years. We thought we were just moving to Huntington for a quick couple years, and then we were gonna. I don't even know what our thought was, but certainly not 15 years. We're in the same house, and great community here, and yeah. So In Sand is building its first brick and mortar location, 2.4 acres, We're just rethinking the family fitness center. So we'll have. We're basically trying to. I don't say this because people don't view themselves as wanting to be Olympic training athletes. It doesn't really resonate with them. But I'm basically trying to take my entire experience on the U.S. team and through the Olympics and try to make it accessible to everyday Joes and Janes, because their journey is just as important. They have to perform as moms, dads, as coworkers, business owners, and it's important, I think, to have a community where you're being invested in to help you perform at your very best in the places that you need and desire. So, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Reid, thank you so much for just everything. I mean, those are some pretty detailed stories, and I had vivid images in my head as you were telling them. Before we officially wrap up, do you, where can people find more information about Insane or follow you on social media and follow along, all these journeys you have?
Yeah, insand.com. It's pretty simple. Insand.com is place you can go and kind of see what we're doing. We have very, very aspirational goals to extend very quickly. We have a satellite version of Insand. So we're going to be looking for partners all over the US to launch these little mini satellite communities. And then we want to come in with brick and mortar locations. I'm just another fan of Team USA, and excited to see how they do next summer. And even more excited about 2028. I can't even imagine. I'm surprised there hasn't been more buzz about that, but it's going to be extremely exciting to have the entire world and the Olympic world descend right here in our backyard. Can't wait.
Can't wait for LA. Got to get through Paris first, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One games at a time.
All right, Reid, thank you again so much. We appreciate it.
Very good. All right. All the best.
Bye, Reid. Thanks. Take
care. Bye.
Now, I think that was probably one of our most detailed oriented interviews that we've ever had here too. I mean, just the layers he added to every single experience. And what I really like too is as he was talking about those experiences, I really like how, UBJ really brought up certain, game or match or set situations, that the national team was dealing with at the certain time. So I think that was a really, really great addition to that too. But I mean, yeah, what a storyteller.
Oh, thanks, Clarence. Yeah, I could talk to Reid for hours. It is really interesting for me to get to talk to players who've had a little distance from the game and can now look back on some of the things that I remember so well, like that semifinal match in the Olympics against Italy, that just how devastating that was. And then knowing how he was able to come back personally and then help the team come back and win the bronze medal. That was just an amazing experience. And a great interview for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the, that I've had the distance from the game portion of it, because, from, his introduction through high school and everything, he definitely has a healthy obsession with the game, through recovering from ACL surgery and, still able to come back and compete at not only a higher level, but at a more, advanced level of thinking level till that, as his body's recovering or what was recovering through all that, learning new ways to attack, how to utilize the block to his advantage, and then applying all of that to his normal game, which is already insane. Once he was fully recovered through things. And then, you guys heard him talk about Insand and, how he's continuing to stay involved in the development of the game. Now it's an amazing journey, and, we wish him nothing but the best. And again, Reid, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to us, man. It was really, really, it was very insightful. And, I'm really glad we got a chance to sit down and talk.
Absolutely. Now it's time for our upcoming events. The NTDP Indoor Boys Fall Training Series will happen September 15th through 17th in Colorado Springs. We have some beach tour events coming up. The SSOVA September St. Pete Beach Regional Qualifier takes place September 10th in St. Pete Beach, Florida. That's a mouthful. The NTDP Beach Accelerator takes place September 15th in Owings Mills, Maryland. USA Volleyball's Men's Beach Collegiate Challenge will be September 15th through 17th in Owings Mills, and we're getting some good signups for that, so that should be really exciting. The USA Volleyball Beach Tour in the North Texas region will be the Mad Sand Volleyball Tournament. It's a regional qualifier, September 17th in Plano. And another USA Volleyball Beach Tour event, Chesapeake region, the Wave Fall National Qualifier takes place September 17th in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Hope I pronounced that right. Good luck to everyone competing, and shout out to all those USAV regions setting up and hosting the events. And you can find more details on usavolleyball.org.
All right, now onto the pro side of things. Up first, we have the NORCECA Men's Continental Championship that is going on right now through September 10th. The U.S. men's national team are competing in Charleston, West Virginia at the Charleston Coliseum and Convention Center. For more information, tickets, and streaming links, visit usavolleyball.org. Beach Pro Tour Futures Warsaw for Women in Poland through September 7th through the 10th. Up next, we have the Beach Pro Tour Futures Brazil, September 7th through the 10th as well. NORCECA Men's Pan American Cup Final 6 in Canada from September 16th through the 25th. And lastly, we have the FIVB Women's Road to Paris Olympics Volleyball Qualifier in Łódź, Poland, September 16th through the 24th. Just kidding. This is our last one. Beach Pro Tours Futures in Halifax from September 21st through the 24th in Canada. Remember, listeners, you can rate, review, watch this podcast with your friends, share it with your friends, families, and teammates. It really, 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 really helps this podcast grow and reach new avenues of listeners. And you can check out our video episodes on our website and YouTube. We thank you all for your continued support through this entire podcast existence. If you know of a club that should be featured or a story you'd like us to share, you can also email us at usavshow@usav.org. You can also leave us feedback there via email, and also just continue to let us know about any future topics that you want us to talk about. We will do our best to cover it. Remember, new episodes drop every other week. And until then, thank you so much for listening to the USA Volleyball Show, the official podcast of USA Volleyball.